This episode of Navel Gazing is sponsored by valleygivesback.org. Adding a Valley charity to your estate plan creates a lasting legacy that tells future generations what causes matter to you. Your action will inspire others to follow your lead and make a difference. With a planned gift, you have the power to impact the Valley community forever without affecting your current lifestyle. Learn more at valleygivesback.org, an initiative of the Valley Community Foundation. Plan now, give later, and impact tomorrow at valleygivesback.org.
For hundreds of years we've brought you the news. Printed the info, we gave you the clues. Owners' profits were always sky high. Changing market now threatens our lives. Post-literation, critical reading, dumbed down nation, signs of inbreeding, TV sucking ideas from our head, public discourse just about dead. Well, ride the dinosaur. Yeah, ride the
Hey everybody,
dinosaur.
welcome to Navel Gazing, the Valley Indy's weekly podcast. Today is Monday, February something. What's today? The day after the Super Bowl. February 5th. Yeah, last night was the Super Bowl, which saw the Eagles beat the Patriots, which I got to admit will probably lose a lot of fans.
Fly, Eagles, fly.
Yeah, I was very happy with that. You got to look a little closer to that mic.
Yeah,
But,
I was just thinking about that. Like, I grew up a Patriots fan, like back to the days when Scott Zolak was the quarterback and like Drew Bledsoe. But I'm stealing this from somebody on Twitter. The sentiment they were like, "I'm from New England. I grew up in New England, a Patriots fan." But like, since they became the evil empire of football, like I can't root for them as passionately. That's sort of how I feel, with
yeah, they're the New York
cheating
Yankees.
scandals and everything.
I don't watch
Sort of-
football, but I was a
Yeah, I don't
Giants
follow it
fan as a
closely.
kid. I was always the New York Giants. The Mark Bavaro, Lawrence Taylor.
Matt
days,
Barr,
Phil Simms. I don't know who Matt Barr was.
the kicker, he hit that really long field goal against San Francisco.
I remember, wasn't Raul Alegre? That's like the era I remember.
Bill Parcells. Yeah.
When Bill Belichick was like an assistant or
yeah.
defensive coach or whatever. But anyway, yeah. So I was, you grow up as a native New Yorker, you don't like the Eagles or the Patriots because the Patriots were the Jets' main rival and the Eagles were one of the Giants' main rivals. But hey, all good things must come to an end. So that was the Bad Slugs that you hear that start this podcast on most weeks. And that's a band made up of a bunch of editors and reporters, journalists from the Connecticut Post, Hearst, Connecticut, part of the empire. Speaking of empires, they own every newspaper in Fairfield County and like half of the state at this point. Yeah, because they own the Register and actually, they own everything.
Them and what's the other big conglomerate?
Online Journalism Project. With a couple of little ones. But you saw, I got a text from you or a message, I believe it was Saturday night, the band, the actual Bad Slugs, you saw them in concert. Where was that and what was that like?
I guess they play sort of frequently at the Windmill Tavern in Stratford. It's a nice place.
Tons of groupies.
And they have like a room
So you're like
for a band.
You're a Bad Slug groupie because this is like the second time you've seen them, right? You're touring.
I've seen them, I think, more than twice.
Wow.
But Mike DeSalvo, who we both worked with in Danbury at the News Times.
He never liked me. He had a problem
years
with
ago.
me, but he would never come out and say
Really?
what it was. But whatever.
But he plays the guitar, so I've seen them a few times. They played in Danbury once.
What I didn't realize, and this is real inside baseball, but this is a navel gazing that gets us back to our self-involved roots. That's why it's called navel gazing. This was originally started just to blab about us. We didn't think anybody would actually pay attention, but some people did. Another member of the alternative media scene was there. I just came up with that term. Stephen Krawczyk of DoingItLocal.com was hobnobbing with these ink-stained wretches.
Yeah. He did a Facebook Live video.
Wearing his trench coat,
he had the
shtick.
fedora with the press thing
Heavy
stuck
shtick.
in it. Yeah. He did like a short video and shook hands with everybody I thought about shouting out, doing it local, but I didn't. I was a coward.
And I'm sure everybody knows Doing It Local. That's that Facebook group that does anything from the scanner goes on there, and that in Bridgeport, Fairfield, and then he loves Seymour. I guess he's from Seymour.
Okay.
So he'll also post some Seymour and Valley stuff. And Crowchick was just on Face the State, the Dennis House show on WFSB. It's like the Meet the Press of Connecticut.
And Derby State Rep Themis Claritas was on last week.
Yeah.
Right?
Hey, Dennis House.
Yesterday.
How about me and Ethan?
That's okay. You could go. I'll forego the appearance. I'd get in trouble.
Yeah. So, but I mean, I'm obviously jealous, but congrats to doingitlocal.com for appearing on a statewide television program. Hot dog. So let's talk about the most read stories from last week on valleyindy.org. It was a busy week last week, if I remember correctly. What's like number 5 on there?
Number 5, Derby police accuse teen of trying to burglarize vehicle. That's a constant sort of theme we see. People breaking into cars, especially unlocked cars.
I live my life. I just assume every night someone is looking in my windows to try to steal something from my car. That's really the way you got to be. Especially with all the drug addicted, opioid dudes walking around, So it's not just the Valley, it's everywhere. I mean, there's this nationwide trend now of, it used to be like, it's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are? Now it's like 9 p.m. Lock up your stuff.
Yeah.
So people should do that.
And number 4, Ansonia man faces child porn charge. There's been a sort of depressing flurry of those recently.
We had 3 in a week. Some of it's because we checked, you went to court and just pulled some files. It's not like, and each one's, they're not connected, right?
No. And there was another one, a guilty plea out of Shelton, and another Derby case. Number 3, Derby police officer resigns. That was out of a meeting last Monday.
We're the only ones that covered that, too.
Right, yeah.
And just subsequent to that, we
put it, just really quickly,
we put in an FOI request for the internal affairs report. I don't even know if we would, just to see what's in the document. It's a public document. I'm not sure how useful it would be because I haven't seen it, or that we'd even use information for it because we haven't seen it. But it was interesting to me, at the same time we were making that request, President Trump and what's his name, Nunes?
Devin, I don't know how to pronounce it.
They're all wrapped up in this whether to release classified information and release the memo and all that stuff. And it struck me that when we put in the FOI request for the internal affairs report that led to the resignation of this police officer, we were told by contract the officer has 9 days to decide whether he wants to protest its release. So actual union member at the Derby Police Department has a greater time period to respond than the President of the United States, which is just one of those things. Then he denied it. So we're filing an FOI complaint with the state to gain access to it. It's pretty clear. There's literal case law on this that says you can't just say no. And I'm wondering, like, he's not even a police officer anymore. How is he still? How is he still subject to union rules? But anyway, we'll see you up at the FOI.
Or maybe it'll be, it's going to be finalized at their meeting this month. So maybe after
there's
that,
some type of way like that.
Because there's going to be like a release of liability. That's like the last thing.
Stuff,
so
okay.
I would think the release would, if it's a total release, it would release.
I guess the officer's claiming that it's a somehow a violation of his privacy, perhaps. But we all, if you just Google Matt Kaufman, FOI, 2-prong approach, you can get all the
Perkins case,
all the case law on that. There's something else I wanted to add about that, but I can't remember. But anyway, Derby once before under the Stafari administration. Not that I don't think Mayor Stafari had anything to do with it, but it was just when he was in office. This government. Actually, it was the mayor's attorney, actually. It was the city corporation counsel, Joseph Coppola, denied the New Haven Register from seeing a personnel file, one of the DPW workers who had done some controversial private work while working for the DPW. And in that case, Derby lost. And we wrote a story and actually played the audio. So I guess it's that same thing again. So that was that. What is that, number 3? That was number 3. The officer had been arrested and accused of in a domestic violence case, and now has resigned.
Number 2, cell phone ban at Seymour High School. This was followed up on by several TV stations that I saw.
I didn't realize that. Yeah, but none of us credited. None of them credited us.
No, of course not. Really good talker. It was one of those ones where like I saw it show up on the AP, and it's like, oh,
isn't that great? We take the time. I went that meeting. That was a 7:30 to 11 p.m. meeting. And I'm trying to go to more Seymour Board of Education meetings this year. It's like my New Year's resolution. And there's one tonight, as a matter of fact. And I thought, I actually held that because I had 3 stories out of that. And that was like the second one we published. But yeah, it gets picked up by TV, and then it goes to AP, which is like the news flu. And we get no credit for sitting in that meeting or doing original reporting. Nothing.
If we both forego our paychecks and paid $100,000 to be in the AP, we could get credit for that, but that wouldn't work out for us.
How much it is?
I don't know. All right, number 1, Shelton standoff ends peacefully. That was, I forget, I don't know, it was Thursday or Friday last week. There was a person barricaded in a house, and police got a call to check on him. And they suspected he might try to commit suicide by cop, but they got the tactical unit there and were able to convince him to surrender peacefully.
And that's that.
And he had no injuries, thankfully.
So then about what we're working on this week at the Valley Indy. Tonight, as I just mentioned, there is a school board meeting in Seymour, 7:30, I want to say. I believe it's at the Chatfield Opresti School. And one of the items on the agenda, it came up last time, but I didn't write about it because I'm just too dumb. The high school is talking about making a schedule change. Basically, it was hard to follow. It's if you don't have like a kid in the school and you're not familiar with school schedules, educators have a way of talking about schedules that make sense to them. Doesn't make sense to me because I'm an ignoramus, but
they have a way of talking about everything.
It's very hard to and when you try to say, "Hey, is this what I'm saying?" It's really hard to break some of that stuff down. That's why the big newspapers, when they used to have staffs, would have an education reporter who specialized in that, because that person's job was to take that sort of education speak and make it more accessible, and which is what reporters are supposed to do, and that's our job. So from what I've heard, the high school now has this schedule like AB days. You might have social studies or whatever every other day. And they're like 90-minute classes, 80 to 90-minute classes. And they want to change that and make them every day and shorter. So credit to the parents. They were not out in force. They were asking questions about it, acting as a natural check on the administrators in education. They wanted to know, what this is going to do, and they expressed their concerns. And they're supposed to talk about it again tonight. So there's a lot of interest in the Seymour school community, involved parents about that issue. So that's tonight, Monday, 7:30, Seymour School Board. And then tomorrow in Derby at Sherman's Tap House, I believe it's 181 Main Street. It's where 500 Degrees
right.
used to be.
Yeah. Right around the corner from City Hall.
Yeah. Derby Mayor Rich Zekin is going to be guest bartending. And that money raised, I believe it's from 6 o'clock? Do you have the story up?
6 to
I just
8
realized.
p.m.
Okay.
February 6th. Bar tips and 10% of sales to benefit Team Inc., which is also right in downtown Derby.
They're on Elizabeth
They do a
Street
bunch
there.
of good stuff for the community. So that's,
That's something unique. And I thought that was, Rich Mayor Zekin had mentioned that on a previous Valley Indy podcast. So it is worth listening to these things, people, even though only like 100 of you do a week. But that's that little raise some awareness. That's a TV thing too. WTNH will eat that up. You know what I mean? That just speaks to TV.
Like the the intercut with like the cocktail scenes.
Mm-hmm. Pouring drinks for a cause, so that's good. And then also, this is a story that we've been sort of not sitting on, but I haven't had time to write it. The Ansonia Derby school consolidation, or creating a regional school district issue, is moving along as fast as these things move along. As government moves. There was a Derby Aldermanic subcommittee meeting last week or the week before, and I don't exactly remember when. It was operations and procedures, and they basically voted to pass along a resolution that'll go to the full board during their meeting later this month about whether to authorize this study with Ansonia to possibly create a regional school district. To me, it's newsworthy compared to everything else. All the other regionalization talks there have been since 2009. This is the first one where it starts a formal process. So I think this, if they go through, and anything would eventually have to be approved by voters, and the purpose of the study is to answer your questions, because a bunch of people had like, what's this going to cost? Well, that's why they're doing the study.
Exactly,
that's why they want to do that. So all that will hopefully come out. So it's the beginning of a long process. And Ansonia, the aldermen, are meeting, I think, this week, right? Is that right?
Thursday they have a special meeting, 7 p.m. in City Hall, and they're going to basically vote on the same thing to create this sort of joint commission to look at the question of regionalizing school districts. And according to the paperwork in the City Hall, the resolution is sponsored by every single one of the aldermen, so it seems likely that it will pass, and that'll sort of kickstart the same process.
And I had asked
in Ansonia.
I had asked the Corporation Council, and I had emailed Alderman Yauman a while back, because it seemed like this resolution came up in Ansonia and then kind of got either watered down or went nowhere. Because it's important to point out there's two different things that are happening here. You've got Derby and Ansonia entering into a formal process under state law, which is concrete. Then you have this other discussion taking place, which takes place all the time, of shared services. I mean, Derby and Ansonia, if they go through this thing, they're talking about creating a new school district, essentially.
Yeah.
As opposed to this, we're going to share an IT guy. It seems to have a little more teeth to it. I don't know if that's the right.
Yeah. The same Alderman Yauman, the 5th Ward Republican alderman in Ansonia, he brought up the same resolution last year at some point, maybe August or September, to kick off this formal process. But then during the meeting, they talked about it for about an hour, and they changed it to this idea of looking at shared services. Obviously, the election happened since then, and a lot more of like the Team Cassetti people got elected, so that seems to swing it back to kicking off this formal process again, which they're bringing up. And as I said, it seems like it'll probably pass.
And then Corporation Counsel Marini said in an email response, because I basically said, hey, what happened to that? You guys brought it up. It seemed watered down. It's shared service seems to be, it's a little different. But he had said they couldn't find anybody last year that basically wanted to do this with them, which is, I don't know. So that's that. So that's going to be something we'll continue to follow. So
maybe a reference to Zekin's election.
Yeah, that was one that I had never heard publicly before. I don't remember it coming up at a Derby alderman meeting last year, but I certainly could have missed it. But I'm not sure. And then you have Seymour and Ansonia school districts talking about shared services. I think Derby Schools has been in informal contact with Shelton schools to talk about shared services and things like that. We'll see where it all goes. I mean, it's interesting. We'll see if the school districts in all these towns go along with this, because to some extent you have the aldermen, if you go through this process, they're taking it slightly out of the school board's hands by making it sort of a legislative priority.
But then,
or
as
endeavor, I guess.
Referendums, if it were to go forward, there'd have to be referendums in both places that would have to be approved by voters at the end of the day. So
yeah, and just like my early take, I don't think Ansonia vote, and it has to be approved by both towns. If Derby and Ansonia do it, it has to be approved both in Derby and Ansonia. I can't see Ansonia residents voting. I could see it passing in Derby, possibly, but I don't know. I don't know if Ansonia, just my gut early reaction is, I'm not sure it would fly here. So, but I'm usually completely wrong.
Yeah, my bad at predictions.
I did not think the Derby WPCA referendum from a couple of years back would pass, and it did. So, and then something else happening this week. Frequent podcast guest Kurt Miller. Let me just bring up his page here because I just closed it. He's the Seymour 1st Selectman. He was supposed to announce an official run or have an official kickoff at least 2 weeks ago, but it did not happen. And he, of course, didn't tell us about this because That's First Selectman
As
Miller,
is his wont,
who
yeah.
often complains we don't cover Seymour and then doesn't tell us what's happening.
Pulls the fast one.
But anyway, he'll be on his I don't know when he's due to come on again, probably soon. But anyway, he says he's working on some final details. This is from his personal Facebook page. But he's got a campaign kickoff for state comptroller, which I believe is the first time he said definitely comptroller.
Right.
For Thursday, February 8th, 6:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m., 2 hours. Tavern 1757, that's on Roosevelt Drive, right next to Villabianca in Seymour. 318 Roosevelt Drive, also known as Route 34. So there's Kurt Miller officially kicking off his campaign for state comptroller. News. So that's sort of what our week is shaping up to be. I thought we would just quickly talk about this week in history. We used to do this every week, and then we sort of dropped out of it. When this show was first, we used to do this live on the radio, and depending on guests and things like that, we would the show. This podcast was always like this, just sort of improvise, and we would have This Week in History as a sort of filler. But they're always very interesting, and I pick these out, so you can blame me if they're not interesting. But again, they're stolen from DerbyHistoricalSociety.org. Very good website. February 3rd, 1935. This is in the city of Derby. The police arrest a 28-year-old man for breaking and entering. He's taken to New Haven County Jail. He's subsequently charged in a number of recent crimes. But what is disturbing is he seemed to always use young boys for accomplices, some of whom are coming forward. The Evening Sentinel likens him to a Fagin school of crime. Is that how you say that? Fagin?
Oliver Twist reference?
Yeah, real. Yeah, I had to
very
go.
literary Evening Sentinel there.
I had to go.
Nice.
Yeah, nowadays, I called somebody a creep, somebody who was looking through cars that got caught on video, and our readers went on Facebook and were like, how dare you? But back in the day, you could call people members of the Fagin school of crime. You want to do the next one there?
Yeah, February 4th, 1935, a truck accidentally knocks over the police traffic booth at Main Street and Maple Street. That's interesting.
I don't even know what a police traffic booth is.
And then, like, I guess there was one right over the bridge. Weird.
Was it like before red lights? Like, I wonder during rush hours, would they bring out a police officer and he would kind of, when he needs to come out, he'd act as a traffic light, sort of?
Yeah, and that intersection, right, is where the new police station is going to be eventually.
And in 1935, they'd get a lot of
that was right.
A lot
near
of pedestrian traffic going to the factories. You got
factories.
Farrell's right there. Everything's right there.
Also, February 4th, 1935, Derby, Officer Frank J. Mannion becomes the police department's new lieutenant, replacing the late Lieutenant Anthony Urbano. Lieutenant Mannion would go on to become the chief of police.
And if I'm not mistaken, still has there's plenty of Mannions in Derby. I know that.
Yeah,
so.
I've seemed to hear that name, yeah.
Pretty cool.
February 5th, 1958, the federal government says Ansonia has until October 30 to submit downtown redevelopment plans, or the city will lose its urban renewal funds. But they can't be done until United States Army Corps of Engineers completes a survey of flood work needs, and all attempts to get them to start have failed.
I love how anything about the Army Corps, it's just automatically boring. It's just really boring. But there's still, the same issues are happening today in Derby.
The fact that the Army Engineers is also a federal agency is not lost on the local press, and the hopelessness and absurdity of the situation makes page one headlines. Sort of Kafka-esque situation there. February 8, 1958, Shelton. Derby attorney Harold Yudkin writes Governor Ribicoff, saying that the only way to stop the rash of fatal accidents on the Shelton stretch of Route 8 is to make it a 4-lane limited access highway. Talk about history repeating itself.
Route 8, which is now, that was Bridgeport. That's now Bridgeport Avenue, I believe. Or maybe, no, I might be messing that up. Because Route 8 wasn't the Route 8 that we know now, I believe, in 1930. This is 58.
Yeah,
actually, I don't know. But Route 8 always a death trap.
Yeah, and it's knock on wood, we haven't gotten one in a while, but there was like a rash, maybe a couple of years ago of just, it seemed like every week there'd be a horrible accident between exits 12 and 13. So,
and I should just mention that future guest on Navel Gazing, the Valley Indies podcast, Patricia Tarasovic will be coming on. She's of the Valley United Way. to talk about a press event. Actually, when we publish it, the press event will have probably happen. We're going to talk about a new initiative that the Valley United Way is undertaking, and we're going to have on a representative from the Valley Community Foundation soon to talk. It's grant season. This is the time where nonprofits can apply for grants from the Valley Community Foundation. So we're going to talk a little bit about, well, first of all, how to make that accessible, that discussion accessible to people so they listen, and how nonprofits can try to access those dollars. And this podcast, by the way, is sponsored by valleygivesback.org, which is an initiative of the Valley Community Foundation, and we thank them for their support. So with that, I mean, the only other thing I can think to quickly talk about, maybe, Ethan, is there anything? You and I are both avid media consumers. We watch movies. We do some Netflix, Amazon Prime.
I finally finished Wormwood. That was good. Errol Morris, the guy who did The Thin Blue Line. Yeah.
Yeah, you told me about that, and I wasn't interested in it, and then I watched it. Yeah, it's incredible.
And I had never heard of that story, and it was like a big national story for years. I never heard of it, but yeah. And then just trying to think.
Basically, it's alleged that the CIA killed an American citizen.
Yeah. Back during the bad old days of experimenting on people unwittingly.
LSD.
And stuff. Just trying to think of, just a lot of.
I'm way into the video game Friday the 13th, the game.
Oh, right.
Has Xbox out there. I'm almost ashamed to admit that, but yeah, I've been doing a lot of that. But I mean, on Amazon Prime, I saw I think it's called They Come at Night, which it was like an indie thriller. I don't know, it's sort of something's happened to the world, and this family is existing together, and it's sort of about paranoia. And how far do you go to help another person or not? Really good. Not uplifting in any way. A real downer, I will warn you in advance. But that's really about it. So I guess with that, unless there's anything else that jumps out, let's call it a day. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your support, and we'll talk to you soon.